All right, first technique for the video today is slip one purlwise with yarn in front. It's pretty straightforward. So purlwise just means slip it from one needle to the other as if you were going to purl, so in the same direction. That knitwise would be this way, in which case you'd end up twisting the stitch, but we're just slipping it purlwise. With yarn in front means this yarn, your waist yarn, is being held in front, so we're going to slip that stitch. Then we're going to bring that yarn between the two needles to the back of the work, and we're going to knit to the end of the row, and that's it. Turn the work once again. Slip one purlwise with yarn in front. That yarn is in front of my right hand needle. I'm going to slip that stitch from the left needle to the right needle. And then I'm going to bring this yarn between the two needles to the back of my work. All right, our next technique is going to be casting on provisionally. You can use any waist yarn. It doesn't even have to be the same thickness as your primary yarn in order to do that. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that. One way is to just, on your other needle, your left-hand needle, you can just cast on stitches. The thing I don't like about this is that it's a little trickier to unpick those stitches when you're ready, these stitches, when you're ready to pick them up. So if I needed to cast on provisionally 6 stitches, I would just cast on 6 stitches with my waist yarn, and then I would go ahead and take my working yarn and I would just knit those stitches off of the other needle. They're going to do a fine job of holding that yarn. They're going to, it's just a little tricky to unpick this waist yarn when it turns out you're ready to pick these stitches up and knit the other way. Another method you can use that I like a little bit better is to use a crochet hook if you're comfortable with one. And we're gonna crochet stitches onto this needle, your same left-hand needle, around the needle. It's a little bit awkward. So I've got my slip knot here on my crochet hook. My working yarn is going underneath my needle. I'm gonna reach around the top and pull that through. Then I'm gonna take this working yarn and bring it, whoops, I'm losing my loop here. I'm gonna take that working yarn and bring it back around to the back of my needle. I'm gonna reach over the top with the hook and pull it through again. Bring my working yarn around to the back of the needle, take my crochet hook over the top, grab that working yarn and pull it through again. Do it again, take my working yarn around the back of the needle, crochet hook over the top, pull it through, and around to the back again. And you keep doing this for as many stitches as you need. When you're all done, you snip your waist yarn, and you can either pull it all the way through, or what I like to do is just pull it tight enough that it'll kind of hold, and then leave it there so that way it's easy to know which end I need to unpick from when I'm ready to go. And once again, these stitches are already live on your needle. You're ready to knit down them with your waist yarn, just like we did before. My favorite way to cast on provisionally, it's a little easier to start, but it's a little trickier to do the picking up of your stitches. So I'm just gonna go ahead and with my crochet hook, I'm gonna loosely crochet a few more stitches than I need. So if I need 10 stitches, I'm gonna crochet a chain of 12 or 14. In this case, we'll just do a few. So, and I'm just doing a normal crochet chain. I'm doing it a little loose on this because I'm using a very thin yarn and a small hook, and I'm picking these up with a bulky weight yarn on a larger needle. So I'm just gonna loosely make some loops here. And then again, when you get to the end or when you're done, you're gonna just snip that yarn. You can either pull it all the way through, or what I'll usually do is pull it most of the way through, leave a nice loose loop, but tighten up that last stitch. All right, it's a little tricky to see here, but we've got two things. We've got, okay, so on our front side, we've got these V's. I don't know if you can see those V's. We've got sort of a V shape here with a line down the middle. But if you stick your needle through the stitches, you can really clearly see that V. And then on the back side, so I'm gonna flip my chain over, we've got these single bumps, and those are what we're gonna pick up our stitches out of. So I'm just gonna take my working yarn here, and it doesn't really matter which end you start from, and I'm gonna just reach into that bump on the back side, just the one loop, and pull that yarn through and knit it. I'm gonna find that next bump, being careful not to twist my little chain, just finding those bumps and then knitting through them. Finding that bump, knitting through it. If you have another method you like to use, that's perfectly all right. Definitely look into ways to do a provisional cast on and see what you like the best. All right, so the next note that's a little tricky on this is that when we're changing colors, we're doing it after that first slip-on purlwise with yarn in front. So this here is my main color. It's multicolored yellow and gray. My contrast color for this is going to be this nice bright orange, so it should be pretty easy to see. So, and then this blue thread here, this dark blue-gray thread is my waist yarn. So we're going to go ahead and take that first stitch here. We're going to slip that purlwise with my yarn in front, bring my yarn between the two needles to the back. Then when I start knitting this next stitch, that's when I'm going to join my my other color of yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and go straight into that stitch, leave that tail, just let it kind of hang behind. I'm going to kind of pinch it back here, and then I'm just going to knit, and I'm going to just keep knitting all the way down. All right, at the end of the row, we turn our work around. You'll see over here we've got that first stitch in the previous rose color, and that next stitch is in this rose color. We're not doing any color changes here, so I'm just going to do this normally. I'm going to slip that purlwise with the yarn in front. Bring the yarn between the two needles to the back of the work, and then continue to the end of that row. All right, so here I am with those last two stitches. I'm going to go ahead and knit this one like normal. It's going to get a little loose because I haven't tacked this yarn down yet. And then I'm going to go ahead and knit that first stitch in that other color, or the last stitch, I guess. I'm going to go ahead and turn my work. And now on this next row, I'm going to switch back to my original color, the yellowy golds. But again, I'm going to take this first stitch here, and I'm going to slip that purlwise with yarn in front in the existing orange. Bring that orange to the back of the work, and now that yellow thread is still at the back of my work. So now I'm ready to go ahead and switch. I can pick this one up and begin knitting to the end of this row in the yellowy gray color. And you'll see it works just fine. On our edge, we've got the different colored edge stitches just hanging out. All right, next technique, we're going to be picking up stitches along this edge here, and then we're going to be unpicking our provisionally cast on stitches to be able to knit those freely. For starters, we're going to go ahead and picking stitches up is really straightforward with this particular slip stitch edge, because you can see it easier on this edge because I've got more stitches here, but you've got this beautiful edge of V's. So for that, you're just going to stick your needle in to the whole V. You're going to pick up your other yarn, whatever yarn you're using for picking up, and then just pull it through, and you're going to go the whole way until you have as many stitches as the pattern calls. And you should be very close to exactly the correct number of stitches. You'll notice I ended up skipping a spot here. There's like a floppy end there. I like to leave an extra long tail so that if needed, if I managed to do that, once I picked up all these, I could probably squeeze an extra stitch or two in this very end here if I needed to. But look, there's that missing stitch that I missed. So your corner stitches and your end stitches can get a little bit tricky. But if you leave enough extra thread, you can kind of either use a crochet hook once you're further along. Hold on, let me demonstrate here. Go ahead and pick up a few more of these. So now obviously my needle and my working yarn are way over here, and my tail's over here. But if I picked up all these stitches and I've got 7 and I needed 8, and let's pretend there wasn't enough room here to pick up any more, I could kind of come into this corner with either a crochet hook or whatever, reach in there and grab this yarn here and pull it up. And then once that's up, I can get that stitch oriented in the correct direction and slide it onto the other end of my needle and just pull that right on through, because I left that tail nice and long to give me that other room. Now I have all 8 of those stitches. Now when we're coming to unpick these stitches, if you've set your tail in the correct orientation and you've used the crochet cast on method, looks like this one's caught right here and I don't need that stitch in. That stitch is anchored already, but this one here is not anchored. And then you can just pull that yarn out and it just comes completely out. So you're gonna find that you can either pull the yarn out first and just be very careful and slow, or you can find where that yarn is going through. So in this case, the yarn is going through this gray stitch here, and I can stick my needle through that gray stitch and pull those out. So I can get those all pulled out and put onto a spare needle. And then once I've got everyone captured, looks like there's one more here. And again, oh, I missed one. There's one more here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7. So that first one that I let go because it was anchored, that was this one over here. It turns out I actually do need that one. Even though it is anchored, it's still one of my stitches for my stitch count, because in this case I had 8. And now all 8 of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all 8 of those are here and ready for me to knit, and they've just been sort of held on by the yarn. So there's that.